Hello, and welcome to our Eduro Learning video series, Coaching Fundamentals. In this series, we'll hear from 12 experienced instructional coaches from around the world on topics like how do you define the role of a coach, and what are your best strategies in a coaching conversation. As a coach, many of us believe that it's our responsibility to work with all teachers, and we know that not everybody necessarily wants to work with us immediately. So one of those challenges, how do you move past the teachers who really want to work with you to work with the teachers who are maybe a little bit less interested? And today our coaches are going to talk about their best strategies to work with those teachers who are maybe not resistant, but also maybe not super willing either. My name is Kim Cafino, and I will be your host throughout this series. I've been really fortunate to be an instructional coach in schools around the world for the last almost 20 years, and I've learned a ton from these conversations, so I am super excited to share them with you.
So do I think it is my responsibility as a coach to work with all teachers? I don't know. I have struggled with this question so often, I can't tell you. I think as a new coach, I felt like it was my responsibility to work with everyone and to motivate everyone. And when that didn't happen, I was very disappointed, and I only looked at myself and what I could do better. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I do think that we can always improve, and we should always be thinking about how we can improve as coaches. But I think what I didn't take into account at the beginning were things like school culture, things beyond my control, things happening in the background of a school that I don't even know about. So I think there are some things that it just makes it a complicated question for me. An administrator once said to me when I was feeling a little down about not getting a teacher to progress like I wanted that teacher to progress. And the administrator said, well, Heather, you can't water a rock. And that has always stuck with me. And I don't know that that's always my attitude, but that certainly is something that I will say to myself when I feel like I'm stuck. And that kind of motivates me to put a little bit more attention into someone who I know is going to flourish. And if you work with the people who can flourish, at least at the beginning, I think that trickles down and that excitement catches on. And then maybe you get those people in the middle, right, that are like, oh, what's happening over there? Now I'm interested. And I think you can start to work with everybody maybe by focusing on that group that you know will flourish in the beginning. But again, this is still a question I always struggle with. I don't have an answer.
Yeah, so it's not an expectation to work with every single teacher at our school. And I sometimes wonder, in my moments of frustration, when I feel like things aren't moving as fast as I would like them to, right? Which we've talked about. I feel like, God, look at the outside world. It should be an expectation. Like, what are we doing our kids a disservice? That whole thing, okay, so how do you balance the people who are super excited and want a lot of your time with moving to the people who possibly could become excited, I don't know. I wonder about having your, super early adopter teachers who are excited to become more leaders in that sense, and to take on not coaching, but advertising and showing and sharing ideas and that kind of thing, and helping you light those little fires all the way through the school. Because I think that's how you're going to build this capacity, is having teachers see little things that they're not doing that might make a difference in their classroom.
So often as a new coach at a school, or when a school starts a coaching program, and whether a lot of my experience now has been with ed tech, you do want to start with the people who are willing. A school I was at, the international school I was in China, I think that's where our success came, is we started with who was ready. They just needed a little training, a little movement, and then they were on their way. And so I ultimately, though, we're there for everybody. And I even had a friend of mine comment one time and go, oh, you work with everybody. I was like, I said, yes, everybody. And that's awesome because I get so many different experiences. And I get to see so many different ways of learning. I've learned so much just from being a coach. So I think when you transition it's easy if you just keep working with everyone who wants to do, the things that you're interested in or that you want to do. But ultimately, it's the goals of the school that you have to keep in mind. So I think you have to constantly revisit what are the visions of this? What's the vision of the school? What's the goal? How do we want to impact student learning? And so figuring out how that's going to happen and then finding where we need to be working as well. So I think it's that constant revisiting of like, okay, we have these goals. Here's where we are. Here's what we still need to do. I think that constant reflection, and it's easy to just keep working with the people who are on board. But ultimately, we need to look at where's the school going, and then hopefully, if you've been building the capacity and building the trust in teachers, then the people who are a little more reluctant at the beginning are now going to feel more comfortable to move forward as well.
It is our responsibility to work with everybody. I think you can't opt as a coach. You can't opt people out. That's not an option. It's not a fair thing to do. We're a resource and a tool and a support unit. So you have to support everybody. If you don't support everybody, then what are you really doing? Now, how do you get there? I've seen a couple different things work. One is just word of mouth, like people talking about the fact, oh, Tim came and helped me with this. And then that kind of naturally makes other people interested and be like, oh, well, maybe Tim can help me with this. And I still get a lot of questions where I think like, wow, I would have thought I've defined that by now, but I guess you still didn't realize that I can do that for you, but that's okay. I'll help you with that. And then I get requests of things of like, that's really not my job, but I will help you with that because that's part of spreading the word. And the other one that I found that was interesting, and this was really something that happened at KIS, was the competition factor. Ooh. Like I found that, especially within departments, if one person had done something really interesting and unique with their class, that spread. Like students talked about it, colleagues talked about it, and then there'd be another person like, well, I'm not going to have so-and-so get away with that, and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do something cool now. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to try new pedagogical styles. I'm going to try technology. So it's not the conduit I prefer, but there is a certain amount of like competitiveness between certain teachers, and I find certain departments seem to be more that way. At KIS, it was definitely the social studies people were cutthroat with each other. They just, if somebody had done something in one classroom, there was no way that another person wasn't going to try it. They're like, no, I'm doing it. No, so-and-so's not going to get ahead of me. And I even heard those phrases. That person's not going to get ahead of me.
I actually need to get to the teachers who are less comfortable with technology and kind of really just get their perspective on pedagogy from them. And that's really helped me because then every time I hear their perspective, it challenges me to be like, okay, I have to take it another way because this is what they see. This is what's important to them. And then before I approach anybody else, I know that if I can find an approach that works for those people, then I've probably got the rest on board, on the team at least. But yeah.
I definitely think it's our job to work with all teachers. It's easier to work with the willing. It's harder to work with the people who are not. I think part of it is starting with the willing because that's one thing that will help support those other people. Because sometimes, again, people see me and they're like, yeah, but Dave, technology. Technology never works for me. And if they're seeing somebody else that's in their grade doing the things that they're doing on a daily, you don't have to do reports, Dave, all these sort of things, but that person is doing that and they're doing this as well. And hey, hang on, that person's not a tech person either. So that's a huge part of it, getting, working with the willing. They don't have to be experts at technology. That's a big thing. If I can go and work with somebody who is not an expert with technology, oh, that's the dream to me but they're willing. They'll be the ones to bring along everyone else.
I kind of think we do need to work with all teachers, but kind of sneakily, I don't think it has to be me. So, for example, if I'm thinking about a challenging situation that I've had in the past, I try to work with that person's friends. And if that person's friends are on board, then they're more likely to be on board. Or maybe build capacity in that friend or in that person that they obviously have a strong deal of trust with. Then I can swipe over and get them to be the person leading it. So it's not really about me directly working with those teachers, but it's me having a responsibility to improve the learning that's happening in all of the classes, even if it's not me doing the improving, if that makes any sense. That said, working with willing certainly is easier, and it's a great way of building capacity in those sort of teacher leaders at the beginning. So I think it kind of works with both ways. Work with the willing to get the work across the whole school.
Okay. Yes, I think we have a responsibility to work with all teachers. If we only worked with the willing, I mean, look at a classroom. If we only worked with the willing students, would we be doing our job? No. Of course, that's easy, and that's what we want to do. And I think teachers are just as good as students, or maybe better, at deflection and putting up blocks and whatnot. So if someone's unwilling to work with you as a coach, maybe they want to work with another coach. That's fine. But if they're unwilling to work with a coach, they're saying, I don't believe in what we're doing here as a school. So I don't think that's necessarily acceptable. And I think that then falls on sort of admin to say, yeah, sorry, you know what, like, this is what we were going to do here. This is how we're doing it. You have these resources at your disposal, so let's figure out a way that you can move forward.
Okay, well, one of the things that we've done here at ASB is that we have mandated that people should have a goal. And so at the beginning of the year, in any case, usually during September, I would make a point of actually scheduling a meeting to meet with all the people that I'm coaching. And of those people, some people will be more enthusiastic than others. I mean, obviously, but I think it's a matter of them seeing what value these coaching conversations can have, and the fact that in a lot of cases, using technology can make their work easier. It's not something that gets added on top of what they're already doing. And I think that when they come to realize that, they become more willing to work with you and perhaps to invite you into their classrooms and so on. I've never really had a problem with people who have said that they are not willing either to use technology or to be coached, but that could be something to do with the culture of the school. So I think that in general, people come to ASB because they see it as being a high-tech school and a school where there's a focus on professional development, and the expectation is already built in that that is what we will be doing here. So in general, I would say if I look back further beyond my time at ASB, I know you've said before work with the willing, and I agree with that. So I've spent in previous schools a lot of time working with some people who have then managed to do quite amazing things. And then other colleagues are saying, hey, what's going on there? And then it's very easy to just ask, well, would you like me to come into your classroom and work with you? I think that's a good strategy, actually. I think in many schools, there will be some people who are reluctant technology users. And I think that all you have to do is keep plugging away at it, but not so that it takes time away from the people who really want to use you and who can use you in a way that's going to be really valuable for student learning.
Yeah, so I think when you're working on a coaching culture, it can't just be for the willing. The coaches are resources that need to be utilized by everyone. And I think one way to move forward on that is to work with administration about having a coaching culture, so that people know it's part of it doesn't have to be part of the evaluation process, but I think it needs to be part of our process is that we all take advantage of coaching conversations. And I think that goes back to also to the consulting versus coaching. It doesn't mean we all need to have consulting. And I think a lot of times the willing are people who they know they want a quick answer. They want to get going in the right direction. They come to a coach, the coach kind of gets them going and they're off and running because they're willing, because they're modern learners, because they just need that direction. They're trying to save time. And that works. So I do believe it's important, though, for everyone to have coaching conversations, because coaching conversations are reflective conversations. And we can all benefit from reflecting because we learn through reflecting. So coaching culture, which is really just a learning culture, which is a reflective culture, is important. What about those people who are less willing? Well, I think one strategy for engaging them is to develop opportunities to work with groups. So in a middle school that I've worked in previously, there were 3 teachers of kind of every course. And so I never worked with one person, I always worked with 3. And if one person wanted to try something, I would say, all right, schedule a time for me to meet with your teaching team, and we'll sit down and do it, right? So I think that's one way to go. I'm working in a school right now where we have PLCs, professional learning communities, that are working on questions 1, 2, 3, and 4, and in the whole PLC movement thing. And so I would say, can we get your whole PLC to engage in this conversation? And in the end, somebody might not end up doing what we're doing, but they've still maybe been a part of that conversation, and maybe they'll jump on next year. And so I think you don't leave those people behind. And if you have a coaching culture where it's just expected that we do things as teams, and we are trying to learn from one another to give the best opportunities to students for their learning, then there's no excuse for adult learners to stop learning. And we got to work on that culture.
I think in part, you never fully know who are the people that want to work with you. Because again, I think it's so hard to tell. I work at a really big school, and sometimes it really surprises me. I'll sort of maybe throw out a blog post as a share, as an invite. And I think you need to be really conscious and not presuming this person is disinterested in this. Just like you have to be careful and not assuming, oh, I know that this person is going to love thing X. So I think if you can give as many opportunities in as many different formats as possible, teachers are always interested in being better teachers. And again, that idea of not pushing your pace, but thinking about the collective pace is really important. And again, sometimes I'll share a video and I think, oh, only a few people have watched that, but then somebody will be passing me in the hallway and they'll mention, oh, I saw that thing. So I try not to presume this is my group who are interested, those are not, because also it might be something that's been shared out and it's months down the road and then that person is interested in it.
So I think back when I started, the easiest course of action was to work with the willing. It was great. It's super rewarding. There's a lot of enthusiasm, and I think that's a great place to start. But as I am in this position more and more and in different schools, those teachers are going to succeed regardless of whether or not I am there. And they help energize me because it's great to see things come to fruition, and it's great to see the enthusiasm that happens in their class. But that might only be 20% of your staff. So what do you do with the other 80%? How do you cross that chasm, if you will, in order to help? And you won't ever be able to reach 100% of all of the teachers, but that should never stop being your goal. It should always be your absolute perfect state, right? Is where you have an influence and you can help all the teachers. Every teacher, every teacher wants to improve. Every teacher wants to remain relevant. I firmly believe that. Some of them just don't know how to do that, right? You have teachers who can and who will. You have teachers who can but don't know how. And then you have teachers who may not be ready to make those shifts. And probably actually the biggest segment is those who can, but they're not sure how. And that's really the ones who they may come off as unwilling to begin with, but it's really finding that common ground and speaking their language and really listening to what it is they're frustrated with or they're trying to accomplish, and being able to help move them slowly along. Once you start working with more and more of those teachers, those ones who seemed absolutely unwilling, actually, I think may soften their stance. right? And maybe like, oh, actually, there is some merit and there is going to be some payoff to this. So you'll slowly start chipping away at that cohort as well. I mean, it's not an immediate slog, or it's not an immediate payoff. It's not something that you will get like in your first couple of years, right? I remember my first job interview, one of my things, and I think every coach says it, is, my job is to work myself out of a job. You will never work yourself out of a job, ever. The technology is changing, the environment is changing, but what you will do is you'll see your job change, right? What your responsibilities are will change over time, and that's actually a good thing. That means that the culture that you are creating is changing, and so the requirements of your position, they're not going to go away. They're just going to change. They're just going to shift as your teacher demographics, as your student demographics, as your teacher comfortability, as your student comfortability changes. What your focus needs to be is also going to change.
Tons of great practical strategies and tips to help engage all teachers in the coaching process, because we know there's always going to be some that are super keen to work with you and others that are maybe less interested. So hopefully today's conversation inspires you to try some new strategies with your staff in your coaching role. If you like this format, hearing from lots of different perspectives on a single topic, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to get all 12 videos in this series. Turn on notifications to find out when we're live on YouTube and to be the first to see the next installment. Have questions about instructional coaching, or would you like to see a specific video series related to anything about education and technology? Leave us a comment below and let us know. Want to see even more instructional coaching resources after you've watched this series? Head on over to our website to check out our free resources, more videos, and online courses about teaching and learning and coaching in the digital world.